There's a quote that I found earlier this week that I felt was fitting for how I often look at these days that lead into our colder days of the year. It's by 19th century Scottish minister Hugh Macmillan. He wrote, "Nature looks dead in the winter because her life is gathered into her heart. That nature withers the plant down to the root, that she may grow it up again, fairer and stronger. She calls her family together within her inmost home to prepare them for being scattered abroad upon the face of the earth once it warms up again." Ever since moving north of the Mason-Dixon line, I have had an admiration for the colder months of the year. I like the season of gathering closer to home. I like the season where we seek out warmth. We don't take it for granted. When we wait for that day when we wake up and the ground is covered, surprisingly, in white. But this year, I have to admit, it feels different. This year, I might say that the gathering aspect of colder weather feels forced upon us. Perhaps held back from us as gathering means something entirely different now. I don't find myself looking forward to the days ahead so much as I am counting the remaining days we have left when we'll be able to be outside, be able to socially distance, to socialize in whatever limited way we can, counting the warm days that we have left, not looking forward necessarily to the days when we have to be inside. And yet, these days will come and go, whether we count them or not, look forward to them or not. The days of fall and winter, the colder days of the year, they will come and go at the same pace that they always do. This week, we read in the Torah the story of Noah, the great story that is often the first story our children learn because it's so child-friendly. But tonight, I want to share it in a more adult fashion. I can't help but think of Noah in those moments, those last moments before the flood began, as we are in this moment. The ark was built. God had told him of the difficult months that were ahead. Noah and his family were packing, not with excitement, but with an eye for survival. That is how the coming seasons feel to me this year. We are packing with an eye for survival. As I look toward November, December, January, and February, I find myself praying that we come through them healthy, that we come through them with a renewed sense of love for our neighbor, that we come through them with an excitement for the future, having achieved something simply by making it through these coming 4, 5, 6 months. And so I wonder what we can learn from that great children's story of Noah this year as we look at it as adults. We are told that the generation of Noah was filled with corruption, that not only the people but the animals and the earth itself were filled with lewdness. In one midrash, we're told that when Noah told the people that the flood was on its way, if they continued to act in the way they were, to disregard each other, to argue with each other, to mistreat each other, to worship idols instead of God, he said they could prevent the flood if they changed, but they refused. Some said, it's simply not true. Others said, if the flood comes, we're strong enough to fight it. We know how to swim. We will be fine. No flood will hurt me. And then the Midrash says, those very people were the ones knocking on the doors of the ark as it sailed away when the waters rose too high for them. Noah never knew coronavirus, and he never lived during the political partisanship of 2020. But I have a feeling Noah would feel quite at home in October of this year. I think he would tell us what we need to pack, what we need to do in order to survive the coming fall and winter. The Midrash tells us that when the animals were boarding the ark, that Noah sat at the entrance of the ark. And when the animals approached, he was to look to see if the animals knelt down and laid down before the entrance, or whether they stood tall. God instructed Noah, if the animals kneel down and humble themselves before this great ark that you've built, let them in. If they stand too proud, they will have to stand outside the ark for 7 days while you load everyone else first. We pack our ark for the days ahead, not by focusing on pride, not by believing that we have answers, but we look towards these days of survival by preserving our humility. We leave our arrogance, our pride in wanting to be right at the door, for it has no place in these months of survival. A week ago, I was unfortunately under the weather. Stuck in bed, I found that watching the politics of this moment only made me feel worse. So I looked for the opposite. Politicians and politics that were, believe it or not, comforting. Something hopeful and optimistic. A sign of togetherness and humility. The first video I found was an interview of former President George W. Bush. The interview was held on the Jimmy Kimmel Show. The former president was funny. In fact, Jimmy Kimmel asked him if he ever cared about being the butt of jokes so often during his presidency and even now in his post-presidency. And he responded with great wisdom and, as Noah would say, with humility. I love humor, President Bush said, and the best humor is the humor we find when you make fun of yourself. As we pack for the days ahead, I hope we pack some of this humbling humor. I think we need it. We need not take ourselves so seriously in these days. Survival is not just about having the right answers, it's about having the right attitude. That is what Noah checked at the door. If you want to survive a journey on the ancient ark, in the contentious White House, or the journey we have ahead of us, you have to be able to humble yourself, to laugh at yourself, to give yourself a break, to not take things so seriously. We need some of that medicine, and so let's bring it with us. We also know that the animals came 2 by 2. Some of our best songs tell us so. But sometimes we forget that they entered 7 by 7 as well. The animals welcomed into the ark 2 by 2 were the animals who were impure, unable to be kosher. The animals who came into the ark by 7s, the Torah calls them Tahorah, animals who were pure, able to provide sustenance to society. To survive the days ahead, we too have to value sustenance over impurity. We certainly have to value our health. But sustenance is not just the food we eat, it is also what keeps us going. Author and journalist Cokie Roberts said that women draw sustenance from their friends, and that this is a source of their comfort. I'm sure she is right, and I imagine that it doesn't only apply to women. But I'm also sure that the sustenance she was referring to only comes from certain friends, the friends who hold us up, not the ones who strike us down. The ones who know what to say and the ones who know when to show up. Noah packed the ark with all sorts of animals, but 7 out of every 9 were the type of animals we could live with. He weighted the ark toward those beings that sustain us. That, I think he would say, is how you survive a treacherous journey. You survive it with the people who hold you up, who give you sustenance, not the ones who break you down. And interestingly enough, 2 of every 9 guests on the ark were not good for us, but they were still there. There's a prayer in a conservative prayer book. It reads, in part, God, thank you for the darkness, for without it we could not appreciate the light. By the darkness we can measure blessing, health by sickness, laughter by tears, riches by poverty, freedom by oppression. We thank you for the darkness even as we thank you for the light. There was another video I watched last week. There were a lot of videos I watched last week as I was under the weather that I found perhaps most inspiring. It was the third morning of the Senate Judiciary hearings for the confirmation of Amy Coney Barrett, and it was on C-SPAN. At this point in the hearings, it was obvious that Barrett's nomination would be moving forward. The cameras were seemingly no longer on the committee, at least not the cameras of cable news and the world watching. The important, dramatic points of the hearing were past. The decision had seemingly all but been made. But Senator Lindsey Graham, the Republican chair of the committee, promised that he would let any senator who wished to speak. And he did. And they spoke, Republican and Democrat. And they were not contentious. They were not speaking from notes or political stump speeches. I would actually say they did not speak as Republicans or Democrats at all. They spoke as senators. They spoke as colleagues, people who work together every day, who walk the same halls, who have the same job, and who serve the same people. They were collegial. They admitted out loud how much respect they have for each other. They complimented each other, thanked each other after each person spoke. They thanked the chair for letting them speak. And they were sad and disappointed together. Republicans and Democrats, all senators, sad that our democracy has come to this place that they all admitted it is. They were statesmen and stateswomen. They were humble before each other. Tahora. They were pure in their sincerity. And in the backdrop of an election year, when we expect them to tear each other apart, it was notable. And so our task in facing the future is not to limit our experience just to those things that are good, but as our people always have done, our task is also to pack in the ark all those things that remind us of what it feels like when things are not good. That way, when we reach dry land, whether it be March or April or May, we will remember what it felt like when we couldn't gather, when we couldn't be in sanctuaries and malls and in people's homes. We will remember what it felt like when we couldn't be there for our neighbor. We need the contrast so that we can remember how much we love and desire those elements of our world that bring us light. We are the people of Abraham, but we were first the people of Noah. May we have his eyes of survival during these coming months, eyes that preserve humility over pride, eyes that see the faces of those who sustain us amongst the crowd, eyes that honor the light we see in the midst of any darkness we face. With those eyes, I pray to once again look forward to this journey that we will walk together. Shabbat Shalom.